Anyway, I want to get into a bit more of who has actually been political when it comes to guns, and in fact, the shooting that we just saw. So Governor Abbott, who of course was an enthusiastic supporter of all those different laws that we just talked about that got changed, he said that doing the permitless carry law was the biggest and best gun law of last year. It instilled freedom in Texas, freedom to wield a gun without literally any training or looking into your past. That's a kind of freedom, I suppose. They also made it so in foster homes, you can now store guns and ammunition together rather than separately. Apparently, being able to have it, but store them separately, that was too much of an infringement on your freedom. Now you can put it together. It makes it a lot easier for the foster kids to accidentally shoot themselves or the people they're in the house with. Gun owners can visibly display their weapons while in a motor vehicle. All the better to terrorize people, of course. Junior marshals can carry concealed guns instead of storing them in schools and colleges. He also signed the Second Amendment Sanctuary Act, which forbids local agencies from enforcing new federal gun laws because, again, they worship guns above all else. But that's just the law, and that's before this actual shooting. At the same time that they were saying, don't you dare politicize this by, addressing the crisis. They were jumping into politicizing in their own way. Paul Gosar, who has finally, as of like an hour ago, taken down this tweet. He's a politician, technically. Most of his time is spent on places like 4chan and other conspiracy theory websites. He immediately began trying to identify the shooter as a member of the trans community, a leftist, also an illegal alien, also God only knows what else. Mad libs for crazy people. There was no evidence of that. They began spreading photos of literally other people, but they jumped on that. They were super excited when they thought that it might have been a trans person that did this. We don't have this tweet, but Candace Owens too tweeted, "What drives an 18-year-old to murder innocent children? I don't know. But judging by the photos of him cross-dressing, we can assume there were plenty of signs that he was mentally disturbed and abused by adults in his life." So this is the grooming thing. So having access to the guns, that's not the problem. It was that other adults had been preying on this, but none of this is true. None of this is based on literally anything. And all of this goes against their pledge to never politicize a shooting like this. They'll politicize it, Rashad, but only with disinformation and nonsense, not with anything that might stop the killing.
Yeah, and the reality is you don't have to go too far back in the past of this country to realize that when we had our assault weapons ban, what decreased? Mass shootings decreased in the United States of America. That is a fact, okay? They're not concerned about children, John. There was a major GOP candidate running for governor. We covered her on Indisputable. On her campaign truck, it literally said, Jesus, guns, and babies. Now, that was the order of priority. Jesus, and I'm sure she was talking about white Jesus, a fictional character, guns, and babies. That is their holy trinity. And they're not talking about babies that are born. They're talking about fetuses because they don't give a damn about the baby that's actually birthed. They want to make this a red meat issue with a woman's right to choose. So let's take their paradigm here. They believe that guns are more important than children. That's based on their own language and the contextualization of their own campaign.
Yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, she's at least being honest. She's being clear about that. Anyway, like the politicizing, I saw in the immediate aftermath, I saw Charlie Kirk, who I know you've debated. He tweeted, "Look how fast they're moving on from white supremacy to gun control." I didn't understand what he meant at first because I hadn't seen anyone claiming that this shooting was the result of white supremacy. And indeed they did not. And apparently that's not what he meant. What he meant was they talked about white supremacy with the shooting in Buffalo, and now they're talking about gun control. Charlie Kirk is ostensibly a political thinker and analyst. He thinks about and then talks about politics, and he doesn't seem to get that people were preoccupied with white supremacy in the shooting where a guy put out a white supremacist manifesto that had clearly, he's trying to make sure that you know that he was motivated by white supremacy. There's no evidence of that in this case. There was no manifesto. There was none of the Great Replacement Theory. There was none of that. And so I guess, Rashad, we should have been consistent. Despite the lack of the manifesto in this particular shooting, we should have still talked about it just to keep Charlie Kirk satisfied. Instead of talking about the guns that were used to actually kill all of these kids. And you'll notice, by the way, that while we were flippant and we were waving in the wind, white supremacy in one case, gun control in the other, he's moved past all of that. He doesn't give a damn about any of this. They don't even pretend on the right to be horrified by any of this. Ainsley Earhardt, she shed some tears on Fox and Friends this morning. But the others, the Candace Owens, the Charlie Kirks, they don't even feel an obligation to be like, oh, slaughtered children are a bad thing. They immediately move into damage control.
Listen, man, Charlie Kirk is not a thinking man at all. He's a propagandist. This is what he does. He wants to stoke the flames, and he's become very astute at doing so. But look at his proclamation for what it is. Instead of highlighting the truth that the mass shooter who killed Black people in Buffalo had a racist reason for doing so, that's on the record.
Yep.
And we call it out based on the actual evidence available. He wants you to think, well, okay, well, that means every mass shooting should have a white supremacist element. And the first one that does not, that possibly has none, he says, well, there's a disruption in the narrative. Well, it's not. We're just telling the truth. The truth is, if you had a law that said this 18-year-old cannot get this gun, those children would be alive. If you had a ban on the weaponry, these children would be alive. And here's the other thing. The killer actually put out multiple messages on social media, eluding that this was going to happen. Cryptic messages, they call it. Why is it so damn easy in this country for a kid who turns 18 to get that kind of weapon to commit that level of carnage? They're not making this about the children who are dead, the families who have been destroyed. Those lives will never be the same, never.
Yeah.
And when you kill someone, John, you don't just kill them. You kill their lineage, you kill their potential, you kill their children, you kill their children's children. And the death of that young person creates a de facto death in the parents that raised them. They will never be the same. And instead of some of these conservatives actually saying the right thing, which, by the way, used to be a thing, John. They used to actually say the right thing in the first 3 days or so. They're not even doing that anymore. They're letting you know they care nothing about this nation. And once again, the majority of the country stands against them. The majority of the country says something needs to be done. The majority of NRA members, they believe in universal background checks. NRA leadership does not. The majority of America says we need to have gun reform policies and we need to have them now. Guess what? Those that control the gun lobby, they say no. The political elite, they say no. And the Democrats who talk a good game, talk a big game, they say yes, but then they do the exact opposite. That is where we are in this country right now.
Yeah, 100%. It used to be that the NRA would stop tweeting for a couple days.
Yeah.
So everyone was pointing out that in addition to the fact that apparently the last day of school was going to be Thursday, so these kids got so close to being safe for once, not being in an environment where we make them unsafe by the fact that we tolerate so much of this violence. All these right wingers are going to go speak at an NRA conference on Friday. And they haven't all confirmed whether they still will or not, but Trump has. He says, I am still going and speaking at that. So again, we are moving way past even, like Biden, he's performing like the ritual where he comes and he gives a speech where he implies that the government should do something. That's the only thing they'll do, but he's doing that. The right has moved past that. They're not even gonna pretend that they care about these kids. Like Rashad, you're so right about like the shattering the family. I almost don't even want to say this thing that I saw, but we do not shield our audience. They had the parents going and giving DNA samples because they couldn't identify the remains of some of the children that had been killed. And DNA was the only way that they would know which murdered kid was which. And they're moving past that. Candace Owens will shed no tears. Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, his defenders on the supposed left, they're moving past that. They're perfectly fine with that. And there's a lot of people watching this right now. There's literally thousands of people across many different communities. It is almost certain that one of you lives in an environment where you will be maybe a few miles away from the next shooting. Nothing that's done now, and nothing will be done, but nothing that's done now will stop the one that just happened. But we are guaranteeing with the inaction that we are gonna be witnessing today, tomorrow, throughout, until finally, maybe Friday, we've moved on and no one is talking about this anymore. We are guaranteeing that this is going to happen. This is like a record-breaking massacre, but it won't be for long because there's people out there that see this, sick people that think I can do better, and no one is gonna stop them from getting the weapons necessary to do it. Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, all of them, they want mass shooters to be as well armed as possible, and that is indisputable.
Man, when are we going to get tired of routine? Routine responses, routine leadership, routine performative dynamics. Here's what Biden is going to do because it's already in the playbook. Console the nation, visit the family, hold a press conference where the shooting happened. Say it won't happen again. Blame it on the opposition party and business as usual.
Yeah.
Biden is going to do it. President Obama did it. Donald Trump did it. Never president before. Now, at some point, you have to start pushing the envelope. I'm talking to the leadership class, in particular, the White House. Executive orders are a powerful tool. They're so powerful that we really have not truly identified and categorized how powerful they can be. Push the damn envelope. Write the executive orders until the Supreme Court says it's against the law. Show them that you're willing to do the unthinkable here, President Biden. Maybe you get some traction. And even if the court eventually overturns you, the people that care about the policy will not. They will reward you for trying. But damn it, you're not even trying.
Yeah, we can't get them to cancel a tiny fraction of student loan debt, like a less controversial thing than something like this. And some centrists will say what you already jumped out in front of, like, well, no, they'll just reverse it later. Make them.
That's right.
Make them reverse.
Put them on the defensive. Finally.
Exactly. Make them do the incredibly unpopular thing. Show that you will actually fight. People do not regularly get fired up to vote to keep in power people who simply preemptively surrender on any tough question. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.